Stanley didn't talk about his films that he'd made. He was very interesting in that way because Stanley was a very passionate filmmaker for subject matter. And when he was making a film or about to make a film or preparing it or dreaming it up and writing it, whatever, he was obsessive about it. But once he cast it and filmed it and edited it and went through the scoring of it and then went out and promoted it, because subject matter was usually so controversial that it was Stanley Kramer who would do the circuit. For Judgment at Nuremberg, when Stanley was a very young man, and he was a first lieutenant in World War II. He was privy to see those films. I think they were Dachau films, of all those bodies, the Holocaust victims' bodies being bulldozed into those pits. And I think it devastated him, as it would anyone. And of course, it was the first time it was introduced on film, it was in Judgment at Nuremberg. And during his promoting his films, he would always like to choose to go to all the college campuses. He liked to provoke the young people and feel what they were thinking and how it was heading, and if he had shocked them, and just get a feeling of what they were feeling, what their values were. Because after all of his films were about something important to say, and it was hard to promote them. But he loved it with the young people. But most of the young people, before he made Judgment at Nuremberg, and he would bring up some of these experiences, they didn't really believe that the Holocaust had ever happened. You know, that's frightening when you think about young people in universities denying that or not believing that, because they'd say, 6 million people? Impossible. That's a fantasy that never really happened. So that when he saw Abby Mann's television, I think it was Playhouse 90, I think it was an hour show, he knew that's what he had to do. And actually, Abby wasn't that well known at that time. But I think Stanley would feel sacrilegious if he hadn't asked him to actually open it up and write a screenplay. And I think they developed an absolutely incredible film. And Abby Mann, of course, won the Academy Award, as well as Maximilian Schell. And Stanley, of course, received that year the Irving Thalberg Award, which was, I think, the most meaningful moment in his entire career.
We did the television version for Playhouse 90, and we had a lovely cast. We had Claude Rains, we had Paul Lucas, we had Maximilian Schell as a young actor, and boy, what an actor he is. Our ratings weren't the greatest, and I wanted other people to see it. And I was really getting nowhere, except for a lovely woman named Katharine Hepburn, who admired my work, and we were friends. And she showed the television show to Spencer Tracy. And that's how it got made. Tracy wanted Kramer to direct it. And I must say, he had good taste.
I don't think Stanley ever made a film for an audience. I think he made a film for what he believed in. And in many ways, he was searching for his own truth.
You see, what happened then was that the administration was so careful about not alienating Germany, because they say that's our allies now. And as a matter of fact, they really told Kramer not to do it. And the courage of Kramer is that there was the election with Nixon and Kennedy. And Stan said to me, I'm going to try to do this no matter what. But I'm not sure I can if Nixon wins. And fortunately, he didn't. And that's the kind of guy he was. He was a stand-up guy, you know.
I think Stanley always was the leading male character, standing up for right against wrong, or trying to understand what were people thinking. That's why he liked to go to the college campuses, to kind of sift out, where are we heading?
He was a director who believed that he was working with such talented people, probably the greatest movie cast of all time. So therefore, he didn't give them too much direction. He would just give them enough to give them an insight in what he wanted.
I think as an actor, I think that you felt very secure with him. He gave you room for your creativity to be able to work through what you wanted to do. But you also knew that he was guiding you. He was not going to let you flounder. You felt immensely secure. Just coming into a room, he had such charisma and such strength and such energy that when we come into a room, just as a person, not even making a film, you'd think, oh, everything's going to be all right, Stanley's here. And he had that kind of energy. He instilled that in people without saying very much. But no, he was on top of you. He liked simplicity. He didn't let you get over the line with something. And they respected him. I think the word was respect and safety. An actor can flourish if you respect the man who's in charge and if you feel safe with trying things. Everything that he did was authentic, if he could do it. We were in that phase of being authentic, but most of Hollywood was not that authentic. About 15% of the film was made in Nuremberg and Berlin. Stanley wanted to make the entire thing in Nuremberg and Berlin. He wanted to use the courtroom that was actually used. But the courtroom was in use and he couldn't. So he had to take measurements and pictures and all that, and he came and duplicated it here in Hollywood. And I think that transition, I don't think I could ever tell the difference. But of course, all the exteriors were shot actually on location.
It was somebody's crazy idea to open Judgment at Nuremberg in Berlin. And it hadn't been too long that this whole thing happened. And people were saying to Tracy, don't come, who knows what'll happen. So Tracy came, and so did Hepburn, but she didn't want to be seen. She was in a hotel. And so Tracy and I are walking to the place where the film is going to be shown. And all of a sudden, somebody leaps on Tracy and holds him by his neck. And Tracy is so petrified that he keeps walking. And who it was Monty Clift. He was so glad to see him.
Well, I think when you're married to someone who has made a contribution, such as Stanley, and there are others, of course, too, who have made great contributions in music and film and as a doctor, whatever, I think you inherit that responsibility, first of all. I think you inherit the responsibility to make sure that history records itself properly. I think that's important because I don't mean just from a self-grandosing ourselves. I don't think that's important at all, but I think for history, it is important. Because we are a composite of the past and the present and hopefully the future. And how are we going to know the future if we don't know the past? How are we going to be able to assess our present if we don't have the composite of all? And so I think for those, that's meaningful to me and should be meaningful to other people. And as long as I'm alive and others like me and you, I think that we'll make sure that the flame will burn brightly and that we will take our films, our past films, seriously.